to be Jewish and in Israel and be standing up in the Dizengoff Square in Tel Aviv against the apartheid law which Israel has just adopted. Take a moment to reflect on the courage and integrity to be a Jew in Britain in this current atmosphere and be standing up for Jeremy Corbyn and against the witch hunt being conducted against him. That courage, that integrity, looks and sounds like Glyn Secker, the Secretary of Jewish Voices for Labour. Glyn, welcome to the show.
Oh, good evening.
Give me your response to the breaking news that the disciplinary action against Dame Margaret Hodge has been dropped, would you?
Yes, I'm astounded by that. I mean, not only did she insult Corbyn by, calling him, accusing him of being a racist and anti-Semitic, which is a gross accusation and completely false and a real slur against him, but actually she used the F word in this sentence, and that's been conveniently dropped by most of the newspapers covering this story. Imagine if it had been the other way around, if someone, if Corbyn had used such language against Hodge. Can you imagine the outcry?
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Astounding it is, but it's been done. Perhaps it means a general amnesty. Perhaps it means Mark Wadsworth, for example, might be reinstated after his unjust expulsion.
No, I don't. Yeah,
but you doubt that, don't you?
I do very much. Yes, I mean, because this is not a campaign against anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. It's a campaign against Corbyn, and it's a campaign against free speech on Israel. So there isn't a way of placating this campaign by offering them one head after another, because they won't be satisfied until they have Corbyn's head, I'm afraid, or until we actually defeat this false campaign and secure his position.
Well, I made the point earlier, as half an Irishman myself, I'm entitled to respond as the Irishman. When asked the way to Dublin, he replied, I wouldn't have started from here. I wouldn't have started from this IHRA and examples. I would have come up with my own definition of anti-Semitism, and that's what should have been done, in my opinion, from the start. But we are where we are.
Well, can I just interrupt you? It is very odd you should use that phrase, I wouldn't start from here if I were you, nor would the original author, Kenneth Stern, of this IHRA definition in sworn evidence to a Congress committee, House of Congress committee. He said he was appalled at the way it was being misused to chill free speech and criticism of Israel and close down discussions in universities. And he has disowned his own definition because he wrote it really as an aid memoir for researchers. He didn't write it as a definition of anti-Semitism. Quite extraordinary.
Well, one could come up with a rather more pithy definition of anti-Semitism than the thousands of words that have now been adduced nowadays. That's true, and you're correct that he has declared that IHRA definition an orphan. There's also the news today that one of the editors of Jewish News, one of the three newspapers that in a carefully coordinated front page assault on Corbyn, calling him an existential threat to Jewish life in Britain, has said that the newspaper was wrong to use that phrase. Tell us about that, if you would.
Yes. So this is Stefan Orizutuk. I apologise for my pronunciation of his name. It's really difficult for me. He's actually said it's repulsive. This is a dedicated anti-racist. We're trashing. Just don't buy into it at all. And he is sticking by the pledge he made to his father, who suffered persecution, both, from fascists, from Stalinists, and so on. He said that I will always commit myself to being truthful. And as a journalist, that's what he's doing. And he's obviously put his job on the line at Jewish News, because this is an amazing break to make with them. But I think he's correct, and I admire his principles.
You must get frustrated that so many people who are not Jewish purport to speak for the Jewish people in Britain. I'm thinking of Dan, the Corbyn man in the Mail, for example, Dan Hodges, who pontificates, if that's not a mixed metaphor, as if he were the spokesman for British Jews, and indeed was taken down by a member of the Board of Deputies, no less, on Twitter just the other day. There are all kinds of people describing people like you as the wrong type of Jew, aren't there?
Oh, yes, indeed. yes, indeed they are. Yes, and the self-hating, anti-Semitic, wrong type of Jew. That's right. But then actually, there's a Jewish maxim, which is that in every discussion and every meeting, the minority voice should always be recorded, because one day it might prove that it was correct.
Well, that's a good maxim. In the Labour Party, in which I sat for 36 years, I used to always, I was in 1973, the sole non-militant member of the Scottish Executive Committee of the Labour Party Young Socialists. There was 14 militant supporters and me. And on every decision, I recorded my dissent in the minutes. And I'm glad to say those minutes still exist. So I've always followed that maxim myself.
There you go.
Now,
can I make a few comments about the Board of Deputies?
Would you kindly? Yes, please do. Please do.
There's a very good analysis by a couple of good Jewish spokespeople at the moment. One is David Rosenberg for the Jewish Socialist Group, and the other spokesperson for Judas. And
those were the wrong kind of Jews that Corbyn spent Passover with.
Yeah, that's right. And they've both made the point that the Jewish Leadership Council, although it appears to be a weighty body and claims to represent the Jewish community in this country, is elected by no one. They're just self-appointed. And that the Board of Deputies itself is a very peculiar body in terms of its claim to be democratically representative of Jews in this country. It's composed of members from synagogues. Only about half the Jews in this country are members of synagogues. And their election procedure is really odd. None of the positions are contested. Very few people turn up to the meetings where the elections take place, and they're really just confirmations of the oldest and most senior member of the synagogue who happens to sit on the Board of Deputies as their representative. And there are no policies or any of the normal processes that you would recognise. There's no publication of the numbers that they represent or the numbers of the electorate who vote for them or anything. So it's really just a quiet little club, and they can't really claim to represent all the Jews in this country. One
of the glorious things about the Jewish community as I've known them is how noisily different everyone is. It's not as if there has ever been homogeneity amongst Jewish people. I happen to have read a great deal about this. Going back 100 years, the debates between socialist Jews, Zionist Jews, Bundists, and all the different trends within the Jewish community, the idea that one person, one body of opinion, speaks for all the Jews is clearly ridiculous.
Yes, I mean, the problem, of course, is that now all the mainstream Jewish media, as we saw the other day, the Jewish News, the Jewish Chronicle, and the Jewish Telegraph, actually publishing an identical article, all of them. They have a unified position, and this very brave guy, Stefan Ozurkuk, actually published his point in The Canary, not in his own newspaper. And, of course, all the mainstream press are repeating the position of the Board of Deputies and Labour Friends of Israel and so on. The debates that go on, the ones that do go on behind closed doors. We don't see them out in the public, except, of course, for the hapless people like ourselves on Jewish Voice for Labour, Free Speech on Israel, and Judas and so on, where we raise the debate, and of course we get pilloried for it, but then that's the price we pay for what we stand for. And what we stand for is always with the oppressed, never with the oppressor, and that enables us to take a principled position vis-a-vis Israel. And to do what I did yesterday when I was speaking to the big ride for Palestinian children, was to challenge the Board of Deputies to come out vocally against the real rise of racism and anti-Semitism in this country and in Europe, represented by the Football Lads Association, the 15,000 people, appallingly, who turned out on the streets to demand Tommy Robinson's release, and Netanyahu, who has hosted Orban, the leader of extreme right-wing government in Hungary, and who has agreed with the Polish government that their law outlawing any reference to Poland's part in the Holocaust, Netanyahu said that's a legitimate law. So Netanyahu is now lining up with Holocaust deniers, and this is bizarre and extremely disturbing. And yet the Board of Deputies and the Jewish Leadership Council are completely silent on this real threat that's developing, and all they're going for is this forced campaign of anti-Semitism against Corbyn. If it wasn't so serious, it would be laughable.
Yes, but it isn't laughable because it is so serious. And, I mean, from the point of view of leadership of a minority community, just imagine if Corbyn were to narrowly lose a general election and another 5 years of Tory rule hated by millions were to be visited on Britain, and this campaign against Corbyn were held as it would be to have been a significant factor in the weakening of the Labour cause, how can that possibly be in the interests of a minority community?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I think it's really dangerous. I mean, if you think about the prospect that faces us in Europe, Corbyn and the Labour Party is the only remaining socialist party that has a chance of getting into government. That's why there's so much opposition ranged against him. It's very, very heavy, very serious. And we actually all want Corbyn to stand up to the Board of Deputies and Labour Friends of Israel and say, now enough is enough. Call their bluff. But of course,
I think he would like to do that, Glyn. Indeed, I had some conversations today that persuade me absolutely that he would like to do that. But the problem is the enemy within. The problem is there are three blocks involved. There's the leader, there's the Parliamentary Labour Party, and there's a deeply unstable National Executive Committee. And I started out by saying I think we've reached the stage that Corbyn will have to accept the IHRA and all its examples, bar one, the one about Israel having been a racist endeavour.
Wow,
that seems
you
to
think
me...
they'll give way on that?
Well, no, I don't think Corbyn will give way on that. In fact, I'm certain.
But
I'm certain that he won't. But no, I don't think they will. But here's the point I'm making: if Corbyn says the example, the racist endeavour example, is my Stalingrad. This is a battle that we must fight, win or lose. It's perfectly possible that caught in the pincer between the Parliamentary Labour Party and the National Executive, Corbyn could be overruled.
Yes, I agree with you. The difficulty, of course, is that the National Executive, he has just a majority of 2 currently on the National Executive, and there are people there who are wobbling.
Yep.
And this decision is going to occur before the new executive is elected,
yep,
where he would have a larger majority. So it's very, very difficult indeed for him. And I don't think the Board of Deputies will capitulate on that. It's half a point. It's point G
yes,
of the IHRA definition. They won't capitulate on that.
No, I agree. They won't capitulate at all because, as you said, look, you can't make a wolf happy until you're dead and in its belly, and that's the situation we're in.
Yes, indeed. And what we need, of course, is large numbers of people who are Corbyn supporters, particularly if they're inside the Labour Party, getting on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, and supporting Corbyn and supporting the National Executive Code of Conduct, and to say we don't want any movement from the principles of this code, because essentially it's pretty good. And we need a mass movement from the floor of the Labour Party to support Corbyn. And we need these people to send these tweets and Facebook postings to every member of the National Executive and actually to every Labour MP. And we need to build a campaign so that it's very difficult for them to push through with their initiative. I think they've got a good chance of winning it, but I actually think that we could make it really difficult for them. We might make them step back.
Now, how do people support Jewish Voices for Labour? Have you got a website, Twitter handle?
We've got we've got a website, jvl.org.uk. And jvl.org.uk is our Facebook page, and we've got a Twitter account, and people can go on there and give us their support. That would be great. And also people can join us. If you're a member of the Labour Party and you're Jewish, you become a full voting member. Unlike, by the way, membership of the Jewish Labour movement, where you neither have to be Jewish nor a member of the Labour Party to become a voting member. Very peculiar.
Very peculiar indeed. But then very peculiar is this whole situation. Glyn Secker, Secretary of Jewish Voices for Labour, thanks for joining